Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we unpack the messy, beautiful intersection of creativity and business with the artists, marketers, and founders shaping our culture. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made, and I'm the host of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Kenneth Fitzgerald, design critic and educator, Fred Seibert, creative executive behind MTV and Nickelodeon, and David Gallagher, transmedia storyteller and writer. I'm forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we are always open to more sponsors that align with our creativity. That said, Pixel Retentive is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a studio that produces entertainment quality animation and illustration for brands that want to stand out in gaming, entertainment, and pop culture. We help companies tell stories that resonate with imaginative audiences and turn viewers into fandom. Whether your brand needs creative strategy, an exciting trailer, a fully produced show, or just some fun motion graphics, we got you covered. Visit getepicmade.net and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign. All right, got that out of the way. With us today, we have the Debbie Millman, which is absolutely so exciting to have you here, Debbie. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Carl. It's great to be here.
Super pumped. So for those of you that have been living under a rock and don't know who Debbie Millman is, Debbie is one of the most influential voices in design today and one of the true pioneers of podcasting. Named one of the most creative people in business by Fast Company, Debbie is the host of the Webby award-winning Design Matters, one of the first and longest-running podcasts in the world. She's a designer, author of 8 books, chair of the Masters in Branding program at the School of Visual Arts, recipient of the Cooper Hewitt National Design Award and the AIGA Lifetime Achievement Award, and currently a Harvard Business School Executive Fellow. No big deal. Jeez, Debbie, let's save some accolades for the rest of us. Well, I mean, amazing things you've done. You've done so much, like just the breadth of content and things you've created. It's been really cool getting to know you and explore your brand and see all the cool things you've created and all that sort of stuff. So super pumped to have you here. So
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So my first question I like to ask all my guests so that our audience can get to know you a little bit better. How long have you been in your career, your industry, and what project are you most proud of so far?
Well, I have been a professional designer of sorts for 43 years.
Wow.
I graduated college in 1983. So 43 years. And the project that I'm most proud of is my work with the Joyful Heart Foundation. It is work that I started doing, I think about 15 years ago at this point. I was asked by one of my corporate clients back when I was president at Sterling Brands to work pro bono on developing the positioning and identity of a new organization that was going to come together to help raise money for other organizations that were trying to eradicate sexual violence. And so the organizations that were coming together included Avon, Viacom, Kimberly-Clark, and that was where my client worked, Verizon, the Joyful Heart Foundation, and others. And the Joyful Heart Foundation was an organization that was founded by Mariska Hargitay back when she first started working on Law and Order SVU. She's the long-running star of that show, and the show is about combating sexual violence and getting justice for survivors. And I did that work with my client, Christine Mao, who was then the design director at Kimberly-Clark. And we created the mark for No More, and the mark and the positioning, which is still it's still in use today, and it's been very successful. After doing that work, Mariska approached me and asked me to do work with her, invited me to work with her on the Joyful Heart Foundation. And so I then went from working on No More to working for Joyful Heart and created the positioning and the identity for Joyful Heart as well with my graduate students here at the School of Visual Arts, where I'm talking to you from. And after that, Mariska invited me to join the board. And so I've been on the board now for over a decade, 5 of those was as chair of the board, which was very exciting. And
Sure.
now I host their podcast and their book club. And so I'm very, very proud of that work.
That is absolutely beautiful, and giving back to the community, and I imagine like making the icon that you get to see everywhere, and that like visual representation that like gives people hope and community, and like helps them heal from that stuff has to
Yeah.
like deeply resonate. And yeah, and I heard you speak, not too long ago at Old Dominion University. Shout out to Ken and the staff there for getting you, there to talk. And it was, so I guess, almost shocking to hear you kind of open up about like your experience and like what you had gone through and why you were so motivated to work on that. And and I listened to the episode with you and Tim Ferriss, where I guess that was the first time you publicly kind of said that out in the universe. And it's interesting that like that vulnerability and like that deeply human connection with people, like, hey, I do these big amazing things and people look up to me, but like I've also been hurt by stuff like this. And I'm also human and like vulnerable to these things and came from a place, and like just giving that message of hope, I think, and well-being to some people that may have not got that otherwise without your input. So just paying it forward. I don't know, I'm just kind of rambling around that, but it's just a beautiful thing. So I commend you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. It really does help me feel like my life makes sense in some ways, working in corporate branding for as long as I did, and then using that knowledge and expertise to help create a brand and a positioning and an identity for an organization that I feel is really making a difference in the world. And my working with them to do that is something I am really, really proud of. I'm also really proud of the work. This is an
Of
organization
course.
that has done more to eradicate the rape kit backlog in our country than any other. And that's incredibly important.
So important, and good for you. That's a beautiful thing, and again, I commend you on that. And it's art is so powerful, and creativity. I've listened to some of your talks on like this iconography and how like we've rallied and created tribes around all our little religions and icons and all that, and all that's grown into our similar thing with capitalism and our religious worship of certain brands. And it's sort of the same idea, but I love the power that visualization and creativity can have in healing. I don't know if you know, but like I lost my father a decade ago, and he was like my best friend in a lot of ways, and like inspiration and my creativity. And like I was really struggling because I'd built my whole business up and I'd been doing well, and I established myself as an entrepreneur and a creative, but like I didn't do art anymore. I had 10 artists on my team. Like they got to do the art. Like I got to get more business, right? And I was really like broken when he died. And like one day I just grabbed like a month or two after he died, like one of his old sketches, and like I had on my calendar for like a year, like go do some art with dad. Like it was something I'd been trying to do,
Mm.
and he died, and I never got to it. But I started doing these collaborative pieces with him, and something just was so healing. Like it was wild. And I just kept doing that. And then that became a thing. And now it's like a thing I do every week on Wednesdays. And I make these live art things. And it's really
Oh,
beautiful.
good.
And like it's just wild how creativity and art and all that can come together to heal any kind of wound, really. Like if there is some magic there to like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this thing that feels terrible and put the best of myself into it and come out the other side stronger and like helpful and healing it. I can't tell you how many people have like seen what I've been doing and honoring my father in a way. And they're like, hey, I love that. And like we've built relationships around it and inspired them to do their own thing. So it's really quite cool. So
Well, thank you for sharing that
another,
with me.
of course, yeah, happy to. So when I asked you this question last time in person, you mentioned some really cool projects that I think are worth bringing up. The thing you did where you worked with NASA to
Oh,
send some wild like design into outer space with the wavelengths of the word water and all these different things inscribed on, I guess, some piece of like metal that'll probably never erode unless it hits the sun or something. Like I'd love to hear a little more about that, because I think that was like really cool. Like you send stuff to outer space and then all the other things, but we could talk about that some too.
Well, yes, that was also a project that I'm super proud of for lots of different reasons. I'm a big science nerd, and in another life, if there was one, I'd have loved to have been a scientist. I just don't have the brain power or the ability to understand the fundamentals, really, of
Mm.
physics and calculus and chemistry and biology and all of that. But that doesn't keep me from reading as much as I can and trying to learn as much as I can that does make sense to me. And so, very fortuitously, met a person who became a very good friend of mine who works for the Jet Propulsion Lab at Caltech. And they brought me in to do a couple of talks and workshops. Did a couple of workshops at NASA on communication and the long history of branding as humans, as a modern species, how we've been using brands to communicate and telegraph who we are to each other.
Yeah.
And so Dan, my client, my friend, Dan Goods, he is a strategy director at JPL. He asked me if I would be interested in collaborating with him and a group of other people um, that were planning on creating the visuals that would go on a vault plate on the probe that was going to one of Jupiter's moons, Europa, in 2023. And so we actually
That's when it's
started.
landing.
No, 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 that's when it took off. It's not going to
Oh,
land
okay.
for, it'll be another 3 years before it gets there.
Cool.
It took off in
Snail mail.
2023. Yes. Even as it's going like, I don't know, 78,000 miles per hour or something like that. It's
Right.
still going to take another bunch of years. So, of course, I said yes. And so Dan and I and a group of very smart people, astrophysicists, linguists, I mean, some of the most interesting, smartest people I've ever met, we all started working together to create what the art was eventually going to be going on this vault plate on both the out that would be on the outside of the probe. It would have graphics on the outside messaging outward to the universe, and then there would also be a message on the inside. The message on the inside was a poem that our poet laureate at the time, Ada Limon, had written for the journey, as well as some math equations, as well as some other information in case it was sort of discovered by
Intelligent life. Yeah.
exactly sort of like the golden record that Carl Sagan did on Voyager, but on
Sure.
a somewhat less grand scale.
Right.
And so we were tasked with coming up with a message that would be on the outside of the vault plate. The vault plate was the plate that engineers could take off to get into the probe. So it was
Right.
something that's why it had both sides available to create art on. And so we worked together to brainstorm ideas. Now, Europa is on a mission, or the Clipper is the name of the probe. The Europa Clipper is on a mission to determine what exists under the icy core of Europa.
Oh,
There is a thought that there might be liquid water. If there's liquid water,
could be
there
life.
might be other things.
Mm.
And so this probe is en route to Europa to investigate. We wanted something that was as universal as possible, and we didn't want it to be something that was just in English or just in any language for that matter. And so we came up with the idea of using sound waves, both for the entendre of waves and water.
Yeah.
And enlisted in our networks, we got 110 people to audio record themselves saying the word water in their native language. We got 110 digital files. We had those digital files converted to sound waves. And the interesting thing about sound waves from a graphic design perspective is that you can manipulate them vertically or horizontally, the scale. And as long as you keep the ratio intact, you can still have a viable sound wave.
Yeah.
And so if you elongate it, instead of saying water, it's water. If it's narrowed, it's water. But it still contains the same wavelength. And so I had 110 wavelengths, and I came up with a range of ideas. One was a Big Bang graphic where the center was actually a visual device that signifies the sound of American Sign Language. So it was a visual interpretation of the word water. And then all 110 waves coming out as if it were like the Big Bang coming outward. And I did a spiral galaxy, and I did one that was trying to mimic, it didn't do it well, but trying to mimic the great poster that Peter Saville did for New Order that was based on a scientific chart. That didn't work so well. But those were the three options. And it was very clear that the most viable was the Big Bang graphic, because the spiral galaxy, while really interesting, we were worried that the bending of the waves would actually impact their integrity. And in science, everything has to be accurate. And
Of course.
so we went with the Big Bang graphic and spent, again, about 2 years doing this. And up until the moment it lifted off, I still could not believe that this was happening. And I kept waiting for the call. Oh, they've decided to go in another direction, or oh, they've decided to do this or that. And we had worked so hard, and I just was bracing myself for the news that it might
The
not
letdown.
fly. Because you never know, in the government, and so many things change. And in any case, in October of 2023, the Europa Clipper lifted off. It is now en route to Jupiter's moon as we speak. And who knows, might discover water one day.
That is wild, and officially elevated you to interstellar graphic designer, I suppose. There, which, which is pretty cool. So that's a really short list of human beings. I feel like whoever designed the other stuff for the Carl Sagan piece, and I'm sure there's a couple others in between, but that's pretty
Well, no,
exciting.
as far as I know, the only other sort of messages out in space created by designers are the of those two pieces, the Golden Record, which is again a much bigger endeavor, and our vault plate, which is I still think pretty cool.
So two is pretty amazing. That's wild, Debbie. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, you've been on quite a creative journey. I really loved your presentation. It really hit home for me as well. So, you were talking about like all the ways that like the world rejected you, like just as you were coming up in your career and trying to break free. And like, it's in other ways, and you've described your creative life as something that unfolds with unexpected left turns. And I saw this, in your presentation. And looking back, what were the moments that felt like detours at the time, but ultimately defined like who you became?
Well, all my rejections and struggles were very important to my journey to right here, right now. One of the things that people sometimes like to ask others is, what would you tell your 30-year-old self, or what would you tell your younger self? And I remember Seth Godin being asked that question in an interview that I was watching of his. And he said, well, if I changed anything, I might not be here right now. And so I don't know that I would tell my 30-year-old self anything, because I'm happy where I am at this moment. But there are a couple of things I might like,
Right.
don't date that person.
Yeah.
Don't
But
take
it's like,
that class. There are a few things, but I think that I can look back on all of the rejections and understand not only why I was rejected, which is, I think, a really important self-awareness, but
100%.
also appreciate what not doing that allowed me to end up doing. And so, for example, I didn't take a job that I really wanted to back in the 80s at a magazine as an editor in chief. And I did it out of loyalty to a friend, as I mentioned in my talk. But had I done that, I probably would have set the stage for a much more direct line in magazine publishing. And, you know, I don't know that I'd really want to be doing that right now. That's a much harder, even though it was pretty hard then, it's a much harder discipline to be specializing in.
Sure.
Um, and there are a couple of other things that I can think back on that I did want to do that I've often thought of as maybe fear holding me back. And now I'm wondering if there was just some deep, deep down
Yeah.
part of me that was aware that maybe I just didn't have the talent, you know?
I thought you were going a different direction with that.
No,
But like
no, no.
deep down, it wasn't part of the plan of like the
No, no,
universal
no.
cosmos. No, you're just like,
What,
no,
you know,
that wasn't
I
a
always
fit.
loved musicals. I always loved musical theater, and I was really into musical theater when I was in high school, and thought maybe I'd want to do something in musical theater, and then didn't. And now I'm like, I don't really have a good voice, like that good a
Mm.
voice. I'm no Idina Menzel, and I'm not really somebody that has a lot of rhythm, so I wasn't a particularly good dancer. And so
Yeah.
I think there's a part of me that wonders, rather than fear, if it was just sort of this sort of wise, deep-seated knowledge about what my real capabilities or talents were. So it's very hard to say when you look back at a life and you look back at the rejections, if you have been able to overcome those moments and go on to other things that are more successful than the things you were rejected or failed at. There's an interesting way of thinking about the building blocks in a different way, in a maybe more appreciative way.
Yeah. You just kind of just have to just love the journey, right? And just kind of take it where it comes, and if it feels good to try again, it's like, you were talking with Sagmeister and he got rejected from art school the first time, and then like, took his lumps, came back and applied and got back in. Like, that, yeah, it's like, so there's that road as well. But just navigate. I used to think I wanted to be a model and an actor, and that was what my dad did, and I did some of that growing up, and it was like exciting. And then, like mid-20s, my hair starts falling out, and like I just like, and I really am way too ADD to like really memorize lines. What I realized, like, I like to be entertaining and talk to people and whatever, but like acting actually stressed me out. Like, so I, continued on this other creative path I was on, and now I find it like very fulfilling and happy. Like, it's, even if we have a shitload of work, it's like, it's great. Like, it's exciting. So yeah, I can totally respect that. So another question, after interviewing hundreds of creators across disciplines, like, how has listening so deeply to other people's stories changed the way that you understand and tell your own story?
Um, it's a good question. I don't know that it's changed the way I tell my own story. Yeah, I think I've always been, almost always been pretty open about most of what I've been through.
Yeah.
Um, certainly certainly in the last 10 years. Um, I think that interviewing as many of the world's most talented people has given me a real appreciation and understanding for how people at any stage of their career still struggle or yearn for something that they haven't quite gotten yet,
Mm.
how much making means in an artist's life, and how making is the real centerpiece of an artist's life, and that it's not the promotion or the accolades or the achievements, while those might be important, the real deep sort of open heart love is in the actual making and not in the
Yeah,
appreciation of what is being made.
right. I totally can respect that. And I see that a lot. Like there's people have these limitations about like what can and can't be done within a certain career or even type of art. And it's like if if you're worried about the money and the accolades and the success, it's going to be way harder for you than if you just go, what am I deeply passionate and excited about? What grips me so much that I can't not dump my whole self into it? And those things are the things that you see become very successful and very popular because I feel like those things are what connects to the human experience and people really resonate with, right? Like I was reading, shout out to you on this fun little book here. I haven't had the lack of ADD to read an entire book start to finish with actual words. I have to do audiobooks, but I read this book and I'm so proud of myself.
I am
Um, I,
too, Carl.
I,
Thank you.
I don't mean to minimize it because it is
You're not.
a light read and it's very sweet. And I was just excited. First of all, I opened the first, one of the first things like, really, we did all this like Blades of Grass. I'm in it. I don't even know what the rest of the book's here, but I cannot wait to read it. But this like
But can I interrupt
reminded
you for a
me.
second? That
Good,
was, I stole that idea from Louise Feely, who does that, generally speaking, in a lot of her books. Um, let's see if I can just grab one. A lot of her books here. And pretty sure, yeah, look at that. So this is a book called Elegantissima Design and Typography. And
beautiful.
look at that.
Wow,
Yeah. So
let's
Blades of
go.
Grass is like baby stuff to a fork and a spoon. And I think yeah, look at this. Oh my God.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is really cool.
Yeah.
So my only concern with that would be like I struggle sometimes with the like deconstruction of the utility. So as long as it still functions, like push the design as far as you want, right? So and I'm sure she is
Oh
cognizant
yeah.
of that,
It's
but
super,
so
super easy to read, and
okay, love it.
it's really, really beautifully constructed, as everything Louise does. So yeah, it's a
Well,
beautiful book. This is a wonderful book for anybody that's looking to understand Louise's process and the giant body of work she's created.
beautiful. And shout out to Louise on that because that is cool. I was unaware. So, um, but yeah, reading this book was amazing because it really like, first of all, it seems like a cool project for you and your wife, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah. That like, it's a love letter to you both. Like I imagine when you both look at this, it's like, oh, this is that beautiful little thing we collaborated on, and you talk about growing a garden and all like the magic of your childhood and those trees in that backyard and the space behind your house when you're growing up, and it's like it put me immediately back to my childhood running around in rural Virginia and like no shoes in the ditch, like finding bugs and like oh my god, it kind of just like it was really cool. Like and that was like some of the deepest parts of my own creativity. Now, like my favorite stuff is like crazy. Like I make like it's a weird brain force thing I did.
That's
I
great.
love like treants and all these like Green Man stuff and like but like the core inspiration of my creativity comes from nature. It comes from like beautiful asymmetry and like that sort of stuff. And it was just interesting because I hadn't really connected those dots, but like that like exploration and like magic of the world and like going in between my backyard. We lived on like 3.5 acres. So like and we had horses and all my neighbors had acres and like squeeze between these fences and like go to find these little trees and like finding like skeletons of like of snakes and like I don't know. It was just interesting, right? Like that was my country version of your New York City version, but I really thought it was beautiful. And then like as you're talking about growing this garden and like my wife and I have been growing our own food out of necessity early on when we started our businesses. We didn't have enough money to really eat good, so we started growing food in the backyard, and like now it's like a thing we do and it always feels so beautiful. And like I grow all the food and like put it So like she helps me plan the whole thing, and then I do like a lot of the manual labor. She helps too, but like I'm very capable, so I do my fair share of that in terms of capability. But then she's an amazing cook, right? So like when we bring it back into the house and harvest and make all this amazing homegrown food, and I saw a lot of that in here. It was really beautiful, and like how cool is it to have all these recipes from your wife, and then you talk about the whole process. Just a very sweet book, and I definitely recommend people reading. It's very light, and very uplifting, and it was
Thank you.
beautiful. So yeah.
Thank you.
Anyways,
Thank you.
shout out on that. And then so I think, what was it like doing that? What was that collaboration like? How did this idea come together? Because I'm fascinated by that. Because this
Oh,
is
well,
sort
it
of a
was
deviation from a lot of your
total
writings. So
deviation.
yeah.
Total deviation. During COVID, I at the beginning of COVID, by March of 2020, I was Roxanne and I were about a year and a half into our relationship. We were already engaged, but we weren't living together. She has a place in LA, I have a place in New York, and we were long distance commuting. I'd go stay with her, she'd stay with me, blah, blah, blah. During COVID, she suggested that I come to stay with her in LA because we had a car, we could drive to parks, there was a lot more sky, the weather was better. And so I did. And also, as it turned out, one of her cousins had broken up with her boyfriend and needed a place to stay. So she moved into our place. I moved out to LA to be with Roxanne. And I had a lot of time on my hands, and I've always loved gardening. I just wasn't very good at it. And as a native New Yorker, didn't have a lot of experience or a lot of access, but I always tried, whether it be container plants or having a little backyard, whatever it was.
One
And
step at a time,
so,
right?
yeah, but now I had a lot of time on my hands, a lot of really good weather, a garden center that was within walking distance of our house,
Perfect.
and a lot of space in which I could actually plant a garden. And so I started to do that, and I loved it. And I started to document it on Instagram. I started making these little visual stories, which I had been doing when I travel. I would make little stories of 10 panels or 20 panels about an experience that I had on the road. Because I love expeditions and I go on quite a few. So I started using the garden as a topic and would post a lot of images in that realm. And that year, the TED conference had to pivot very quickly online to going to an online environment. And they asked if I'd be interested in making some little interstitials between the talks, utilizing some of my visual stories that I'd made. I was like, absolutely, I would love to. And so I made three. One was love letter to gardening, one was love letter to travel, one was love letter to storytelling. And they were shown
Oh,
in between some of the talks that year online. In 2021, 2022. I think it was 2022. No, 2021. 2021, I turned 60. And I had decided back in 2017, pre-meeting Roxanne, that I wanted to go to Antarctica for my birthday in December, even though my birthday is a couple months before, but I wanted to go in December to be able to witness the total solar eclipse of the sun that was occurring over Antarctica in 2021. There was an
wow.
expedition that was going, and it was for scientists and amateurs, and I wanted to go. And I told Roxanne this on our first date that I was planning on doing this. She had no idea I was as old as I was and thought, well, that'll be in like 10 or 15 years. So
Right.
whatever. And then she realized, no, no, it's actually in a few years. And so we made this plan to go. And I wrote about that experience as well. That piece, a little visual story, which was also very much about nature, was published in a farm magazine. So a publisher, and an editor at Timber Press, which is a gardening imprint at Hachette, one of the big five publishers, saw my TED pieces and the Afar piece in Afar magazine and reached out to ask if I would be interested in doing some type of book on gardening. I thought it was a prank. I'm not, not very good at this. And so I said, look, I'm not a professional gardener, but if you want me to write a book about my quest to become a gardener and what that was like, I would be thrilled to do that. And that's what happened. And that's what I did.
And here it is. So cool. It's beautiful, all the different ways that like creativity, when you allow yourself to not be put in a box. Like I'm not just a writer or a designer or an illustrator or gardener or not a gardener, right? Like you just can express yourself and make really cool things. And it's also cool. I mean, when you've accomplished as much as you have, people pay attention whenever you make something regardless, right? Like so like but and it's great, because you put your whole self into it. Like you're
Mhm.
not doing things for anybody else. And you know I guess that kind of brings me into another, like, what is it like to be at a space in your life and in your career? Like I know you struggled for a long time. We talked about that, and with all that rejection sort of stuff. And that I heard in your speech, so you're like, I didn't really get to any level of accolades into in your 40s, right? And that really made a huge impact on me, because I just turned 41 2 weeks ago, but I was really like feeling like I'm doing something wrong, because I've been doing this for 20 years and trying my hardest and like doing great things, but I feel like I've not like arrived anywhere. Like, and that's all. What does that even mean, right? Like I'm loving the journey, whatever. There was just me having a moment of woe is me, I guess. But yeah, that's like let's talk about. I put a couple ideas out there. Apologies. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
happy.
I mean, I
Yeah,
think that a lot of my creative endeavors have come when I was either bored or struggling or desperate. I got the
yeah,
cold call about doing an online radio show in 2004. I was 43 when that call came. And at that point, I was really worried that I was losing my creative soul because all I was doing was corporate work, and took that project on. It wasn't even a project. I was paying them for the airtime and the production
right.
time. But I did it because it was something that I could create, that I could make by myself, essentially. With their help, but I was paying them to do it. And that's how that came about. And even the Timber Press book, all of that, your Love Letter to a Garden, it came about through several years of experiments in visual storytelling that helped me develop my craft to a point where I could do something like that, a book like that. I had been
Yeah,
working on my illustrations, working and doing as much work as I could, becoming a better illustrator in the years prior. So I don't know that I would have been really ready to do something any sooner. And I think that because of the speed of technology now, we all expect mastery so much faster than I think it really takes. And I think that there is something about craft and expertise at any craft that just takes time. Some people are born with it. Some people are prodigies. I am not one of those people. And so I've had to, I mean, again, now I'm more comfortable with the speed in which it's taken because I'm three-quarters of the way through the journey. But
right.
for those that are at the beginning, I think it's important to recognize that if you're working towards mastery, you want to be in a position where your best work is never behind you.
Yeah,
And you don't ever want to be a has-been. You don't ever want your best work behind you. I often joke that I don't want to peak until the day before I die, because I don't want ever want to think, oh, look at what I did then. I want to be looking forward to the new things that I'm making.
And I love that. And I think as an artist, we're in a unique position that some careers are not, that we can continue to build and build and build and build. And when you're in a space like yourself now, there's no real pressure, I'd imagine, to be anything other than like, what am I inspired to do now? Like, what has struck
Well,
you?
I mean,
So,
I still feel I have my own pressure. I put that on
sure.
myself. But again, that is something that I've seen in the majority, I mean, the real big majority of the people that I've spoken to on the podcast, where artists tend to just keep searching, investigating, yearning.
It's
And
that creative mind, right? Just
yeah.
questioning and exploring and being inspired over and over again in different ways. It's weird to me how I can walk in the same forest. Like, so I love Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. I'm sure you've read that.
Mhm.
And I started doing my journaling and all that sort of stuff. But I I started getting serious about this artist date. So every Wednesday, like I drop my kid off at school and I go right to the woods and I walk for 2 to 3 hours, like, and just think and take notes and process my life. And it's wild how I can walk through these same couple miles of trails and be inspired and see new things all the time. Like it's never boring, which is cool. And it's just that exploring journey and just circling back. And I take pictures of stuff and I'll find a little creature. I saw like a baby deer the other day being chased by a little fox. It was so cute. I was like, oh my God. I found lizards and snakes. I found a dolphin. I literally saw a dolphin in a creek and I was like washed up into this creek. It was alive. And, like there was some like they were watching it, like the local marine saying there was like a flood. It swam into a place and couldn't get out. But I was like, how do I see a dolphin like inland here, like up a bay? Like it's crazy. So, but it speaks to kind of this like nothing, if you have the right mindset and you're exploring, like it's never the same thing over and over again,
Mhm.
right? Like there's always room for exploration and new ideas, which is exciting. So, um,
Absolutely.
yeah, super cool. Let's see, what else do I got for you, Debbie? Um, hmm. So I know you did some work and we're on AIGA for a while and some kind of it could give back and type of advocacy type of stuff there. Um, I, like I think when did it kind of really hit you that like there's some responsibility in design, like there's some real power, and what does that how does that maybe shape the way that you have done some of your work? Obviously, some of the stuff you've done, like we talked on earlier, with the nonprofit that you're working with, heavily leans into that. When do you think that sort of struck you in your career?
Um, well, I always wanted to teach. I actually taught, I forced my brother when he was a little boy to be my student. When
Love it.
he before I actually taught him so well he didn't have to go to kindergarten. He just went straight into first grade because he already knew everything he would have learned in kindergarten from me. So I've always wanted to do that and I really enjoy it. But in terms of giving back, it wasn't so much giving back as it was sharing. Like I
Mm.
feel being part of AIGA was there was a mutuality of giving and receiving. And I still think of that to a degree in almost anything that I do. It's not just giving back, even if I'm mentoring or teaching, I'm getting as much from my engagement with the students, I hope, as they are from me. So I think it's just a matter of being around young, vibrant people with new ideas that challenge my own that I think I enjoy most now.
Well, that's beautiful, and that's what every healthy community needs, right?
Mm.
You need people plowing forward and then reaching back and saying, "Come this way." Like this is how we do this, you know.
Yeah. And I
Um,
had a lot of that as I was coming up in my career. There were a number of people that held out their hand and said, "Let me help you." And I'll never forget that.
100%. I mean, same with me. And, I'm, 20 years into my career and, as you know, I've been on the board at the AIGA for a couple of years. Ran my local chapter, and now I'm at the Graphic Artist Guild, which is a different flavor of a similar thing. We're more focused on the business aspects of it all, but absolutely. And this year is an example, you're helping me out being on this podcast, and we're having fun here chatting. So that's amazing. So this is super cool. Well, Debbie, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, and we are coming up on the end of time, and this went really fast, as I knew that it would. So, but before we wrap, I have one last question that I love to ask all my guests. And is there anyone in your career that you'd like to shout out to the audience? Maybe a mentor, a valuable resource, or a favorite client?
Yeah, I mean, I'd absolutely love to shout out to one of my professors, Professor Helen Reguero Elam from the State University of New York at Albany. She was the first professor that gave me the sense that I had some good ideas, and that gave me quite a lot of confidence in pursuing more. So I'd like to do a big shout out to her early on in my career. One of my clients is a woman named Karen Lippert, and she was very involved in the women's movement. And she hired me to do quite a lot of work with her, and I did work with Gloria Steinem and Mim Kelber and Bella Abzug back in the 80s, and that was really influential and important to me. So Karen Lippert was also somebody that had no business giving me the work that she did, but did anyway. Big thanks to Steve Heller, who is my fairy godfather. He helps me with everything. He helps me with everything. He helped me get my first book deal. He helped me get my first big teaching gig here at SVA, and he helps me sort of live. So big, big, big shout out to him as well.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you, Debbie. That was kind, obviously. That you are such a humble and kind person. I just have to say that.
Thank
It's
you.
been really great getting to know you, and I'm super glad to have had you on the podcast here. Big shout out to our mutual friend and my former professor from Old Dominion, Kenneth Fitzgerald, for
Hey,
connecting
Ken.
us. And a big thank you from the Graphic Artist Guild to you for doing the forward in our 17th edition of the
Yeah,
Pricing and Ethical
I have it.
Guidelines Handbook.
Yeah, mine's right there.
I love it. There it is. Perfect. So we've been talking with Debbie Millman, and you can check out her website at designmattersmedia.com. But if listeners want to follow up with you directly, Debbie, where should they go?
Well, my Instagram is probably the best place. Debbie Millman, at Debbie Millman. My DMs are open, so feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, Debbie, thank you so much for being on the show. It was such a pleasure. And thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Carl.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.